So I have lived in Russia for 21 years now, 21 years. And there has been quite a few culture shocks. Now Russia's changed quite a bit from when I came to how it is now. In fact, I say quite a bit, it's changed an awful lot. My friends who lived here initially when I first came here, who have moved away, when they come back, they don't recognize the place. And so today, I want to tell you about the main culture shocks that I experienced when I came to Russia. Now, some of them don't exist anymore. So if you come here, you won't experience that. The first one of that is queues. In the past, there were queues. And I'm not saying people were queuing for food and stuff like that. But when you went to some sort of place like the police station or immigration or the housing office or anything like that, we didn't have those machines that you would take a ticket and get your number like you do now. And so there would just be a queue. And so you'd go to the queue, you'd find out who the person is in front of you, you'd say to that person, I'm with you, I'm after you, and that's it, you've got your place in the queue. But sometimes the lines would be so crazy that they'd have to maybe come there at night and make a list and stick it on the door so that they're the first people in the queue. But then someone else would come along, take that list off, throw it in the bin and make a new list. And it often was complete chaos. But now that's changed. So that was the first culture shock for me, was it was kind of unorganized when I first arrived in Russia. But now you won't have that culture shock because we have Gosuslugi, which is a government online portal that you can do everything and apply for your documents and all that kind of stuff online. And so you don't have to go and join queues. The same with immigration, or the multifunctional centre as it's known. It's a place where you can go and apply for documents. You can just get a talon, a ticket, and wait for your turn in the queue to be called. And so, yeah, that whole culture shock you won't have to experience. I actually looked at this house a few years ago. I was considering buying it, but I just didn't like the fact that there were so many houses nearby, especially from the other side. The next shock is that you don't see rainbow flags anywhere. Now, you might see them used for something that's not connected to the LGBT community, but generally you won't see rainbow flags. And also, you're not going to see men dressing up as women or men kissing on the street or any of that stuff. You won't see it. Not only in the street, but you're not going to see it in Russian films, Russian serials, or anything like that. So, being from the UK and not living like in the wilderness or in a national park or anything like that, I didn't really feel that UK had such an outdoorsy kind of lifestyle. So when I came to Russia, the two things that were really shocking for me was we had barbecues all the time, and we still have barbecues all the time. And it doesn't matter if the weather's like this, kind of gloomy and sad looking with a bit of snow and mud, or whether it's summer and it's scorching hot, or whether it's winter and it's -20. We don't have that, oh, the weather's going to be bad so we can't do it. It doesn't matter. You can have barbecue in -20 or +40. It doesn't make any difference. And so that was a shock for me, the barbecue culture. Whoa, very orange fence. The next one was wild swimming. When I first came here, we would go to some lakes that were pretty dirty, that had quite a bit of litter around them, and people would go swimming in them. And I think in the UK, there'd be a massive sign saying danger, no swimming. There'd be one of those things that you throw out, you know, when someone falls in the water to help them. In Russia, there'd be like a wild lake with a bit of rubbish around it, with maybe a bit of metal sticking out the water or whatever, and people would go swimming and wouldn't care. And it took me a couple of years to get used to that. I could not go wild swimming until it just got to the point where I was like, okay, whatever. And then I really enjoy it. And so now, every time, every opportunity I get, I do go wild swimming. And the other thing that is interesting is that, again, is all year round. My mates, 3 times a week, meet at the lake, have breakfast at the lake, and go swimming. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. Obviously, if it's winter, it's more of a dip in the water. But in summer, you know, my mates will go jump in the water and swim to the other side of the lake, which is like 200 meters away, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And here is just completely normal. How cool is this house in the distance with this massive long driveway, and this could be an old well. The next culture shock is taxis. I'm from the UK. If you want a taxi, you call the taxi rank and whatever, you call the taxi company. It could take a while. Now I'm sure now you can do it on the phone app. But in Russia, when I first came here, you'd call a taxi, and if the taxi was going to take longer than 5 minutes, it'd say, sorry, we don't have any cars. And I'd be like, oh wow, I'm used to waiting 40 minutes for a taxi in the UK. And so longer than 5 minutes, no cars. Now obviously now you could order taxis from the taxi app. But again, the crazy thing about taxis in Russia is that they're so cheap. For 150 rubles, like £1.50, I can go literally anywhere in the town. They're going to arrive really fast and they're ridiculously cheap. In the UK, you're looking to go the same distance as you would do in Russia. It would cost about 2,000 rubles. Such a massive difference. It really is crazy. And so taxis were the next culture shock for me. When it thaws in Russia and it leaves loads of water, it also uncovers all the things that people have dropped on the road in winter that have been hidden from the snow. The next culture shock is petrol station or gas station attendants. In the UK, you go and you fill up your petrol yourself. In Russia, quite often, they're going to have somebody to do it for you. Now, they might not have enough people to manage the whole of the area with all the different pumps, but usually someone's going to come along and going to say, no, we'll put it in for you. Now, the custom is to tip that person, but what I always do is I ask them, what do they want from the shop? Because quite often you're not going to have cash on you. You've got your card, so you can buy something from the shop, and typically they say, yeah, can you get me some cigarettes? And so there's a couple of petrol stations now that the guys already know me. So I just say to them, same cigarettes? They're like, yep. I go inside, I say, the cigarettes for the guy, the people know. And, you know, it's just nice to do that. Sometimes in summer, I'll buy them an ice cream. If it's in winter and it's freezing cold, I get them a piece of chocolate and a cup of tea. You can see that even though these houses aren't complete, we've got the barbecue there. The next culture shock is transferring money. In Russia, if you want to transfer money from one person to another, you only require the person's phone number. You go to your bank app, you put that person's phone number in, and it's going to bring you up a list of the bank accounts that they have. You then choose if you want to send it to the bank, which is the same one as the app, or if you're going to send it to another bank. You choose which bank you're going to send it to, press the button, it gives you a one-time code, and that's it, done. So easy to transfer money between friends. If you're maybe going out somewhere and you need to pay all together and someone pays for it and everyone just sends them the money afterwards, it takes seconds. Other people around the world have told me that they don't have that where they are, that it's a lot more complicated, or that you can send money between your friends easily, but to start with, there's lots of verification. In Russia, all you need is the person's phone number. The next culture shock for me is the lack of antisocial behaviour. In the UK, if you go to the city centre at night, you'll know what it's like. It is carnage. People fighting, really drunk people lying around on the floor being sick, littering everywhere, just being abusive to each other. In the UK, I used to get loads of stick. I'm tall, right? So people will call me lanky because that's the kind of like not very nice name for someone who's tall. And so I'd get comments on a daily basis ranging from, you know, just walking to the shop in the morning and the local grandma would be like, ooh, you're so tall. What's the weather like today? Or, ooh, can you change the light bulbs for me? all the way ranging to watch your head on the door every time, getting on the bus or going in the shop, watch your head, all the way to you fucking lanky bastard. I bet your mum's had sex with Superman, that's how you're so big. Where do you get your clothes from? I bet it's impossible for you to get clothes, you lanky beanpole. And then everything else that's even worse than that. But in Russia, that antisocial behavior does not exist. You will not get stressed walking down the street by a stranger. You won't get stressed if you go to a cafe or bar. Someone won't have a go at you for no reason. They have no reason to have a go at you. You're a stranger. Why would they? And that's why I look at the UK and it's like night and day. Because in the UK, anyone feels that they can come up to you and tell you something awful about you. Now, I realise it's changed quite a lot, but in the past, it used to be crazy. I used to get so much stick going out in the UK. It was insane. Believe this, look at that. Oh, oh dear me, been walking in the mud. The next culture shock is public holidays. Now, in the UK, we have bank holidays, and no one really knows what the reason for the bank holiday is. It's like, oh, it's a bank holiday today. And obviously it had some sort of meaning in the past, but it's just a bank holiday. In Russia, the bank holidays have meaning. There's a reason for them. Everybody knows why. There's a tradition based on their culture. There's customs. There's a way to celebrate that day. There's festivals that happen. People dress up in costumes. There's a meaning behind it all. And there's so many of these days in Russia that are really important days on the Russian calendar, and they're celebrated properly. And that is the next difference. It's not like, oh, we've got a bank holiday Monday. It's like, wow, what is the festival? What it's about? What are the traditions to learn? What are the things we're going to do, especially on that day? And there's always so many exciting things and places to go and things to do on those special public holidays. The next thing is the roads. When I first came to Russia, the roads were shocking. Absolutely shocking, and I was coming from the UK where the roads were, well, pretty good. But I've actually heard now that the roads in the UK are pretty shocking, and the roads in Russia are getting a lot better. So if you're coming to Russia from the UK now, you might be pleasantly surprised that the roads are better in Russia than the UK. You'll have to let me know. The next thing is that often you see bikes and pushchairs left unattended. Perhaps the person's gone inside the shop, especially in villages and outside village houses. You're going to see bikes and pushchairs just kind of left there because no one's going to steal them. And it's pretty crazy because in the UK you could never leave a bike unlocked outside the shop. Someone would take that bike. In fact, my brother's bike got stolen a couple of times when we were young, and that was in the early 90s. So it's impossible to leave your bike or pushchair unattended. But in Russia, people often in villages, and in fact I've seen it a couple of times in this city, will leave the pushchair with a shopping bag on, full of shopping, and go inside the shop, and no one will steal the pushchair. It's mad, right? You can't imagine living like that. The next shock is driving police on the road. When I say driving police, I mean the police that patrol the road. So in Russia we have two types of police. We have the usual police that handle all the criminal things, and then we have the police that handle situations on the roads. And so you'll find that there's police standing on the road that are pulling people over in the car to check their documents, to check that everything's okay. Now in the past we'd have loads of police on the roads, but now we've got cameras, and so you're not going to see as many traffic police on the roads that are pulling cars over. And they have like a special baton, and they, you know, stick the baton out to pull the car over, to check the documents, to make sure that the guy is, I guess, driving legally. I often understand that there's perhaps somebody else further down the road that's maybe calling that person, not calling him, but radioing him and saying, look, suspicious car coming up or whatever. And you'll have these police at major events and places where they really need to check the drivers of the cars before they get to the destination, to the main event. But now also, and this is leading on to my next point, we do not really have as many traffic police on the roads, and the reason we don't is because we have cameras everywhere. But how these cameras differ from the UK is, in the UK you'll have a sign saying there's a camera, and so the goal will be to get you to slow down, right? In Russia, the cameras are quite often hidden. There'll be a guy that's got a camera, and he'll put it slightly behind the tree somewhere, and he'll capture cars that are speeding, and then you'll just get a ticket. Or there'll be a hidden camera underneath a bridge or around the corner in a village, and you'll just get a ticket. And the ticket system is very quick. You'll get a notification to say, there you go, you've been speeding, pay the fine. And so that's how it differs to the UK, is because in the UK they'll have signs saying there's going to be cameras here, slow down, and so you'll hopefully slow down, not kill anyone, and not get the fine. Whereas in Russia, there's not going to be any signs telling you there's going to be cameras, right? The next one for me, coming from the UK, is things being sold on the street. Often in different places near to bus stops, you might find that there's women who have grown things in their dacha are selling things on the street. And as you drive through villages, you'll find things being sold on the edge of their plot, on the side of the road, whether it be eggs, maybe jams, fermented foods, things like that being sold at the edge of the person's plot of land as you go through the village. But sometimes it'll just be on a trust basis. The price will be there, you put the money, you take your goods, you don't meet the person. I can't imagine that happening in the UK, or I can't remember it happening when I lived there anyway. And then finally, the last point, is not always cold in Russia, but sometimes it can be like -35, but when it's up until like -30, the schools still work. Everything carries on as normal. Yes, it's cold, so what? People might not even talk about it. There could have been a huge snowfall and the snow is really deep. So what? Everything carries on as normal. Nothing's closed. You just clean the snow and you get on with it. And that is the next culture shock coming from the UK, because, well, in the UK, when we have a tiny bit of snow, that's it. Schools are closed, everything's chaos. They tell you not to travel. Whereas here in Russia, it's just another day. Well, there you go. That's my list of culture shocks. Let me know if you've moved to Russia, what culture shocks you've experienced. And also, is there anything you're worried about when you're thinking of coming to Russia? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you're thinking of moving to Russia and you want to have a free phone call with me, go to my site, samsrussianadventures.com, book a free call, and I'll help you the best I can. Okay, see you in the next one.